A few people have asked questions like BF Juice 356 about data collection when it comes to reciprocal imitation training. So we're going to talk about that today. And in case you don't know, I'm Dr. Megan. I guide people in growing, learning, and cultivating connection and curiosity. One of the things you might have noticed with the couple of sample videos that I've shown for examples of reciprocal imitation training, the first step, I haven't really talked about the other steps yet, is there's a back and forth interaction that's happening. The child is engaging in some sort of responding and the adult is imitating them, and you're going back and forth. So it would be really difficult and probably not very wise to take data during that interaction. Otherwise, you're disrupting the interaction and you're not actually going to see the social communicative nature of imitation that we're trying to build by using this procedure. And as we know, in behavior analysis and education, other fields where you take data, there's a lot of options for data collection. Most of the people I know usually collect data using trial by trial data or first response data. And I have a whole separate section of videos where I'll be talking about different aspects of data collection. But for the purposes of reciprocal imitation training, we're likely going to be doing more of a sampling style of data collection. If you aren't familiar with it, the Early Start Denver model uses this type of data collection where they break the session up into 15-minute increments and they have the goals that the child is working on written down. And then every 15 minutes they pause and they just put either a plus or a minus as to whether or not the child demonstrated responding within that goal. So my recommendation would be, if you're doing reciprocal imitation training or really anything to help promote social communication skills, that you use a similar style of data collection. You don't want to disrupt the actual interaction that you're having to stop and take data. That's not going to promote naturalistic engagement at all. But you can, every 15 minutes, note down on your data sheet whether or not you saw the response happen. So for this example of reciprocal imitation training, what I typically take data on, if I'm focusing on that first step with the child being imitated, is I take data on whether or not the child continued the action. So if the child is clapping their hands and the adult claps their hands, does the child continue clapping their hands? That's one thing that you could take data on just to show that this back and forth is happening. Additionally, you could also take data on other social communicative responses, but you don't have to keep it specific to the reciprocal imitation training. Hopefully you have goals relating to gaze shifting, shared enjoyment, and other social communication types of skills. So when you do the reciprocal imitation training, you're likely to see gaze shifting, shared enjoyment, etc. So you would also be able to put down pluses or minuses for those as well. Notice for this data collection, we're not focused on any sort of specific action or movement. We're just indicating whether or not the child continued with the action after the adult imitated them. If this conversation about goals and data collection relating to reciprocal imitation training or anything else in behavior analysis is of interest to you, make sure to give me a follow.